On this particular occasion, went into Prince Andrew's bedroom in his apartments, and on his bed was, I now know was 72. I said about 50, but I made confirmed it was 72 Sedicans, 72 teddy bears on his bed. And then my inspector showed me a laminated card which is in the sidearm side drawer. Today we are diving into one of the most embarrassing portraits ever painted of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. These stories provide insight into the behavior of the former prince. The behavior was so juvenile, crude, and frankly humiliating that many people are questioning how this was ever tolerated. These are accounts from journalists, society insiders, and witnesses who say Andrew behaved like a child who relied on humiliation, shock value, and petty cruelty to get attention. They paint him as someone who used his royal privilege to embarrass women, intimidate guests, and make people feel they could not push back. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. Grab a cup of tea. This one is quite something. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, now was stripped earlier this month of every remaining title and ordered by King Charles to vacate Royal Lodge. New fallout overseas just days after Prince Andrew announced he'll stop using his royal titles. Now he faces new allegations and investigations related to Jeffrey Epstein in Virginia. It all comes just one day before Rue's memoir detailing her time with Andrew is set to be released. The mansion he has occupied rent-free for more than 20 years. That move followed years of scandal involving Jeffrey Epstein and the disastrous news site interview that destroyed whatever credibility he still had. But as this new reporting shows, Andrew's fall from grace did not come out of nowhere. For decades, people who met him at private events described behavior that was strange, intrusive, and often demeaning. One titled woman summed it up perfectly when she called him the most boorish man I have ever met. The stories you are about to hear explain exactly why. Writer Craig Brown recounts a rather uncomfortable incident from when Andrew was just 17 at a house party with several young women. The morning after brought complaints that Andrew had barged into their bedroom at around 2 o'clock in the morning. He reportedly told them he could not sleep because there was a ghost in his room and asked if he could climb into bed beside them. He was swiftly kicked out. I said, "Didn't you hold a party for, Ghislaine Maxwell?" And he went, "No." And I thought, oh my God, I've got this wrong. Because I had my notes and I'd checked and I'd done all the research and I was like, no, my research is crumbling. And then he looked up and he went, "It's a straightforward shooting weekend." Another journalist recalled Andrew strolling into a girl's bedroom and through into her ensuite bathroom while she was brushing her teeth. He then proceeded to lecture her on how she should be doing it. A teenage prince invading your room to instruct you on oral hygiene is less charming and more entitled nuisance. Even at that age, the boundaries simply did not exist for him. Andrew's behavior toward women seemed to follow the same pattern throughout adulthood. Witnesses say he often behaved as if female guests existed purely for his amusement. At one party, he told a woman that a plate of pate smelled terrible. When she bent down to sniff it, he pushed her face straight into the dish. Party guests say he roared with laughter while she sat there covered in food. Another woman said she woke to the sound of foolish laughter and found Andrew holding a fire extinguisher pointed at her face. She later learned he had charged into several other rooms to do the same thing. The joke in his eyes was worth the humiliation of his targets. The headlines will not go away, and neither will the questions for the palace. But could one of the king's most senior aides have some of the answers? This here's Lord Peter Roslin. Now, he is one of the most trusted members of the king's household. These are not pranks among equals. These are power games played by someone who knew the people around him could not complain. There is also a long whispered claim that Andrew enjoyed what they discreetly called his surprise inspections. Several guests say he wandered the corridors during overnight country house gatherings, pushing open any door with a light still on. One socialite claimed he once opened her door, looked her up and down, and said he was shopping for entertainment. She described the grin on his face as something that made her skin crawl. Another guest said Andrew would sometimes hover outside just to listen in before bursting in with forced laughter, as though he had caught someone red-handed. The effect was unsettling. Many young women said they never felt they could relax for even a moment, because the Queen's son might decide to turn them into the centerpiece of his next joke. He's saying that, for the sake of the country and the monarchy, I'm going now. Well, he should have done that a long time ago. They should have pushed him out. It's happening now because there's been an increasing amount of publicity coming out. Almost every day there's some scandal about Andrew. We've had a couple of stories of leaked emails which I think have come from Ghislaine Maxwell. Andrew developed an unusual set of games, many of which were designed to cause embarrassment. He liked to form choo-choo trains where he would coax guests into a conga line while shouting choo-choo through the room. He also adored a fruit passing game where guests had to hold pieces of fruit between their chin and neck and pass them to each other without using their hands. Many women said it forced awkward closeness and felt uncomfortably suggestive. Another favorite was the mustard trick. Andrew would tell guests to close their eyes, hold out their hands, and make a wish before clapping. What they did not know was that he had placed an open tube of mustard between their palms. When they clapped, the mustard burst all over their faces. Witnesses said this gave him enormous delight. These stunts were not clever or witty. They were childish pranks, usually played on people who did not dare retaliate. In 1981, the Queen rewarded Andrew for gaining his helicopter wings by giving him an Egyptian holiday, to suggest that he is still a key part of the firm, despite being forced to step back in 2019 due to his associations with Jeffrey Epstein. Although Andrew has strenuously denied any wrongdoing, he has been ostracized from various family events. President Anwar el-Sadat even loaned him the presidential jet. It was meant to be an elegant goodwill trip. Instead, Andrew spent most of the time paying close attention to another guest's wife. This did not go unnoticed. The British ambassador later threw him a party attended by members of Egypt's high society. According to one rumor, Andrew jumped into the swimming pool fully clothed and dragged a hostess in with him. She reportedly emerged dripping, miserable, and humiliated, while Andrew found the whole thing hilarious. This was not a rebellious teenager on a gap year. This was a royal on an official visit representing the crown. Although women were most often the targets, Andrew did not reserve his antics solely for them. During the grand opening of the Lincolnshire Regiment's museum, Major General Dick Gerard Wright struggled to handle his speech papers while wearing white gloves. As he removed them slowly, Andrew leapt from his seat, grabbed the gloves, and shouted, "You will not want these now, Dick," before tossing them into the audience. "Right here. We have a large inhale right into the chest." We now know that he was and had been procuring young girls for sex trafficking. We now know that there's a postural shift. There's digital flexion, which just means the fingers are squeezing in towards the hand. People were not amused. They simply did not know how to react when a royal behaved like an unruly schoolboy. One of the most infamous claims involves broadcaster Tanya Breyer. In 1992, Andrew was said to have walked up behind her at a society event and unzipped her dress. This was done publicly without consent and for the amusement of those around him. Another titled woman described a dinner at Windsor Castle where Andrew asked an 18-year-old what her job was. When she said she was a secretary, he scoffed loudly and announced to the entire table, "How terribly uninteresting. Is that the best you can find to do?" Friends claimed he was dreadful to sit beside at dinners because his humor was lavatory, crude, and usually focused on women's underwear, hardly the behavior expected from the son of a monarch. Andrew Lay said the king's brother has a strongly juvenile personality and often behaved in these ways, simply to provoke reactions. But these were not harmless pranks. They were humiliations delivered from a position of immense privilege. Many of his targets were young women and staff members who could not respond without risking their standing. For decades, the monarchy protected him, covered for him, or dismissed complaints, and over time Andrew became more emboldened, more coarse, and more convinced he could behave however he pleased. That illusion is now over. On the 6th of November, King Charles stripped him of all remaining titles and privileges. This came shortly after the release of Virginia Dewey's autobiography, and a growing sense that the public would never accept Andrew's return to any royal role. These news stories make it clear that the Andrew we see today is not a recent invention. The signs were always there. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is no longer styled as His Royal Highness and no longer holds a title. Soon he will not even live at Royal Lodge. But these stories reveal a deeper truth. For decades, Andrew behaved in ways that demeaned, belittled, and humiliated others, often women, because he believed he would never face consequences. Let me know what you think in the comments. I read every single one. Should more witnesses speak out? Should the palace have acted sooner? And what does this say about the culture that allowed it for so long? Do not forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more royal updates delivered daily.